hello, and thank you very much for buying this DVD. I really appreciate you investing your time in something that I think is really important and really exciting. And the fact that you are doing this tells me that you're looking to make your material that you're performing right now into something more than it is. Maybe right now you're a mentalist that's new to mentalism, or perhaps you're a seasoned pro and you're looking for a few different tips and techniques that I think are really interesting and really important to bring it up to that extra level. And I want to talk to you briefly about what I think making mind reading look real is all about. I'm going to pose two different scenarios to you. The first is what I believe it would look like if a mind reader was really reading my mind, and the second is what a typical performance of a mentalism routine looks like. First of all, we have to take a few assumptions on board. The first is that as human beings, we're all unique, we're all different, and we all think in unusual ways. While this might not necessarily be true, I think that's the perceived notion about the way that we think. Which leads me to imagine a real mind reader needing a different technique for each person he meets. You know, it's kind of like he would need to use his skills in a way that was complementary to the mind that he was reading. It wouldn't always be exactly the same for every single person that he met. And every now and again, he might meet somebody that he could not read. It was just impossible for him to read their mind. A way I like to think of it is not that reading minds is difficult, but understanding thoughts is. So for example, if you imagine that we all read each other's minds every day, we just don't know we're doing it. I think this is a really good way of looking at it. And then it becomes about it being difficult to understand the thoughts, not receive them, but understand them. So let's imagine that right now we're watching a real mind reader read my mind. I think it would look something like this. I think he would probably come up to me and he would ask me to think about something. Let's imagine it's a word from a book, or it's a playing card, or make a drawing, some concrete form of proof that he had read my mind. But I don't think this would be the thrust of the trick. I think what would begin to happen is during his process, him trying to work out what that proof really is, we would actually enter into the real stuff. From the start to the finish, in the middle there would be where the stuff that really affected me would live, because that would be him reading my mind. This beginning and end bit is almost like that's just proof that he uses. That's just, yes, look, you were thinking of the Nine of Hearts, or you drew a house. But the stuff that came before that would be the really affecting stuff. I would imagine that he would need to know the way I thought, so he would need a way of finding out what kind of person I am. Do I think in images? Do I think in words? Do I think in numbers? And once he had discovered that, he would then use that to his advantage to make his job easier. Equally, I imagine, once he had discovered that, that would lead him to work out other things about me as a person. And right now, we're disregarding the concrete proof. That's always there, that's always in the background, the word that I'm focusing on, or the card that I've picked, or the drawing that I've made. But in amongst this, we're veering into material that's removed from that. He would be talking about, for example, I get the impression that you're somebody that thinks in images more than words. Is that correct? And I am somebody that thinks in images all the time, so I would be impressed that he had picked up on that. He might then have to change his technique. He might then say to me, okay, as somebody that thinks in images, I want you to see the word that you saw in the book, but don't imagine it written out as it is printed on the page of the book. Imagine the actual object. Create a vivid picture. I want you to think in the way that you would normally think, and the more vividly, the better. So now I might, conjure up an image of the word that I just read. I would bring it to life in my mind. I'd now imagine that mind reader to be able to tell me details about the way I'm seeing this object, rather than just the way it's printed in the book. Now we're veering into material that's removed from what's written on that page of that book. We're going into the way that I'm thinking and how I'm thinking. And if he was a real mind reader, he would be able to tell me every step of the way how I was thinking about what it was that I was thinking about. So for example, he might say to me, conjure up an image. Don't imagine the word on the book printed like it is on the pages of the books, but actually turn it into something. Make it come to life in your mind. Okay, that's interesting. I think you forgot to put the ears on this. Yes? And then, amazingly, let's imagine I was thinking of a cat and I did forget to put the ears on it. And he would give me a whole bunch of other real-time moments. So he might then say, okay, what I want you to do is to count the number of letters that are in the word. Just count them in your mind. And I'm going to tell you when to start. Go. And then I would start. And then the moment I had finished, he would be able to tell me, you just finished, correct? You just stopped? Yes. Excellent. I want you to think of any one of those letters for me. Okay, good. That's interesting. I think you changed your mind. You went to one letter and then switched to the other. And yes, I had. And then you'd be able to tell me the two letters that I had just seen in my head, and then reveal the one that I was thinking of, and then finally reveal the word itself. And then let's compare that to the standard performance of a book test, which would be, think of a word or say stop, good, look at that word, please remember it, excellent. I want you to try and send me that word. Imagine yourself saying that word in your head for me. Good. Pick up the pad, write the word down and show them it. I think there's no competition between the two. One looks to the audience and feels to the spectator as being something more than a trick. I believe it looks and feels like real mind reading because it plays into personality traits that we all share, and it plays into this notion of individuality, and we all think in different ways. And it also plays into the fact that I believe if a mind reader was real, he would be able to tell me exactly what I was thinking when I was thinking it. And it also, the most key feature of all of this is the word that was chosen and the reveal of the word, that's just the proof that he was right. But the material, the reveals that live in between the selection and the reveal of the word, this sort of middle ground here, that's where the real mind reading happens. And if you do this properly, you'll actually find that the material in the middle is far more amazing and far more interesting to the audience than the actual word reveal at the end. That's the kind of concept I want to talk about. So the tools that we're going to talk about on this DVD are appearing to be able to read the mind of a spectator in real time. So for example, offering the opportunity to think of any letter in a word, and then using techniques for us to create the illusion that we know which letter they're thinking of. So even if you had seen the letter in the word in the book, it would not help you know which one of the letters they were focusing on. It's a real-time decision. We'll also talk about ways of being able to preemptively read people's minds. For example, when I ask people to count the number of letters in a word, I turn that into a reveal. And I add as many layers to that as possible. We're also going to talk about ways of using this on a very personal level. There's actually a trick in this that's called people, which is all about reading people, and ways that we can logically introduce real mind reading, both real-time mind reading and also some very personal stuff. And like I keep saying, these are techniques kind of live in the middle of a trick. So the tricks on this DVD themselves are more or less a framework for you to, just as an example, every single one of the techniques and the tools can be used either combined together or separately, and they can be put into material that you already perform. Certainly the tricks are just here as kind of frameworks to explore the concepts and the techniques rather than as tricks themselves. With that said, let's examine the very first trick, which is cards, revealing a thought of card and ways of amplifying the feeling and the look of real mind reading within revealing a playing card. So let's talk briefly about the physical mechanics of the card sequence, and then we're going to examine the techniques and the concepts that really elevate it into more than it is. But to begin with, I want to talk about just the mechanics themselves, because, you know, the thrust of this DVD and the focus of this DVD is to provide tools and concepts for real-time mind reading and kind of vicarious and sensation-based mind reading. However, I do want to talk a little bit about the mechanics, because part of what makes mind reading look real is the reduction of process. I think it would be close to impossible to make, for example, the 21 card trick, the 3 rows of 7, look like real mind reading unless the process made sense. There's a few good examples of people using it under the pretext of a poker game, so it sort of eliminates the process of the dealing and it becomes a natural part of everything. I tend to be drawn towards routines that have far less process in them anyway, which leaves me in a position where it's kind of a shotgun approach, you know, where somebody might look at a card and then I now have seen the card, so right now the process is over, and that's what we're going to talk about now. But I'm going to talk about ways that I think make even these small moments of process more invisible in the long term. My end goal is to create the illusion that I'm reading the minds of people, not that I'm revealing the card they saw in the pack. I kind of want to try, and it won't always be, this will not happen every time. It's not like you can make everybody forget that the cards were used, but I will try to eliminate the cards as early as possible, as well as minimizing their role after the process is finished. So the first thing that I do with a card peek, this is a classic dodge, is I have the cards shuffled, or I shuffle them. I then take them back and I say, I want you to just pull back on the pack, look at one card and remember it. I demonstrate this to them once. They then do it while my head is turned away. So they open up the pack, they look at one and they remember it. They snap the cards closed, and then I'll comment, you've seen one? You saw one in the card? Okay, good. That was very quick. As long as you saw one, it doesn't really matter what the card is. So it feels very dry doing this just with me here and talking about the method and the mechanics of it. However, in performance, this is very useful. It creates the notion that the spectator caught you off guard, or that you couldn't possibly have done anything tricky because you're impressed at how quickly they did it. Of course, in truth, what we're doing here is having the spectator break open the pack. We're holding a break in the edge of the pack. We're now going to peek that card using a classic simple peek, Ed Marlowe's book peek, where I just place my thumb beneath the cards. I now rock the deck over, which creates a step. I'm now able to see the point that the spectator stopped at as the cards are put on the table. I'm sure you're already very familiar with this technique. However, I think this is a good choice for revealing a card because we get that moment at the beginning where I say, okay, I want you to open up the cards, look at one. Good. Have you seen one? That was very quick. It doesn't really matter as long as you're thinking of a card. It's all that really counts. So now I've kind of downplayed the importance of the cards openly, and seemingly there's no way I could have done anything tricky because they did it before I even knew they had done it. So this is just one technique of quietly and subtly trying to reduce the importance of the prop that I do not want any importance on. This is now out of the way. It's done. It's unimportant. I forget about it. So one more time, we'll just go over the peek here. The spectator opens up the pack. We hold the pinky break. As soon as we feel the pack closed, we come around here and say, did you see one that quickly? It doesn't really matter as long as you saw one. It doesn't even matter what it is, to be honest. However, you did see one, correct? Yes. So now we've got the peek. It was the 10 of hearts. So we're holding the pinky break. As we turn around, we start that little bit of scripting designed to make it look like we couldn't be doing anything tricky. In that moment, the deck is revolved, which creates the step. So I now know that this is the 8 of hearts here that they just saw. The deck is placed onto the table. No importance is placed on it. In fact, if you were doing this stand up with a jacket on, I would put the deck into my pocket so it was gone completely. And now we're moving into the second part of the routine, which is the actual concepts of how we take the information that we know, the card that they just saw, and reveal it to them in a manner that seems impossible, even if we knew what the card that they just saw was. Okay, so now you know the mechanics of the card peek. We are going to let you go away and practice that and get comfortable with it, because we'll be coming back very soon with the tools that will allow you to take this, simply knowing the identity of one card, and feed back that information in a manner that would seem impossible even if you did know what the card was. A way of making it look and feel like it's something more than just a card trick. So let's move on to the mechanics for the book trick. And you notice that I'm leaving each one of the titles kind of generic: cards, books, people. And the techniques themselves are not that exciting. I mean, they're very good, very useful, very practical methods for the tricks that we're doing. But the really exciting stuff exists in the words, the psychology, and the approach that we're going to get onto later. So take these techniques and these mechanics, become familiar with them, because these need to be kind of muscle memory for you. You can do this effortlessly, without thinking, without trying, so you can stay on your toes when it comes to really making the reveals count when you start using the tools that we're going to talk about later on. So the method that I chose to teach on this DVD for the book trick, it uses any unprepared book. Literally, you can be handed a book. It works far better with a paperback book than a hardback, but I'll teach you how to do it with a hardback as well as a paperback. But if you ever have the option of choosing which one you want to use, I would always go for a paperback. In essence, it looks like this. Spectators here, I'm going to ask you to say the word stop for me. Right there, good. I want you to take a look at the last few words for me. Excellent. And now just kind of lock those into your mind. And now I know that the last few words were moving onward toward her. That's what they would have in mind. I'm going to have far more words than the spectator's going to have in my mind, but essentially I've just peeked the words in the book. So the method for this, it's based on Larry Becker's flashback peek from his book test flashback. A whole bunch of people have explored and played with it, including Elaine New and Mark Paul and a few others. I've got a few touches on it the way I do it, but essentially it's kind of the most classic book peek that you can use. You hold the book on the lower edge of the spine, supported by the 3 fingers on the back and the thumb on the top. You're now going to riffle the center of the book with the first finger and the thumb on the back. So this gives you a constant stream of pages, like this. So now I'm going to ask the spectator to say the word stop. You'll notice that I'm looking away in this direction as I riffle the pages of the book. This is because I want to be outwardly fair about the book. I don't want to be doing this because if I'm looking in the same direction, maybe I can see something. So my head's turned away, and in fact, that's a rule that I apply to almost every time a card is, looked at in a pack or even taken out, or if somebody's shuffling a deck of cards or something. Whenever there's an opportunity for me to turn my head away and look fair, I'll take the opportunity because I want as much of that to be remembered as possible. So the book is riffled with my head turned away. We're now going to ask the spectator to say stop. Whenever they say the word stop, you stop the riffle. I do this just by walking my second finger into the page of the book. So the first finger is letting them fall, and then my second finger acts as a stop. So I say, right there, good, are you happy? Excellent. Now you'll notice that the book is not being opened that far, and it's also being angled slightly downward. This sort of removes the opportunity for anybody to read any of the words just yet. So now I say to the spectator, good, I want you to concentrate on the last few words for me. Can you do that? Now this is kind of ambiguous because the audience is seeing me do this, and I'm looking away again, so you don't really know where the words are coming from. But if you were the spectator, you would know that I'm pointing over here with my finger. Mark Paul was one of the first people to really bring attention to how important this is. So now you're pointing towards where the words are. So the peek happens at the moment the spectator says the word stop. This is based on the classic Ted Anneman over-the-shoulder blackboard peek. That essentially is, if you're turned away and you need a reason to look, a very good reason for that is to ask somebody a question. For example, I want you to say the word stop. Are you happy there? Good. It just kind of vanishes underneath everything else that's happening. So we applied that theory right here with the peek. The head is turned away. I want you to say the word stop for me. Stop there. Are you happy there? Right now is when the peek happens. The book is being held open. As my head turns over here, the pages of the book are extended further back. I'm now looking at heard more than I ever. I'm seeing that, heard more than I ever. And a good way of practicing this is just to stop riffling like this and just to keep trying to read and process as many words as you can as quickly as you can. To begin with, it's a good idea to simply go for one word, the final word on the outside page here, the one that you're looking at. But over time, you want to be able to process entire sentences. In fact, as much as you can see is my rule. If I can see 6 words, I'll try and get all 6 words. If I can only see 3 words, I'll definitely get all 3 words. But my goal with this peek is to get as much information as I can, because the more information I have after the peek, the more vivid I can make the reveal later on. So my head's away. They're going to say the word stop. Stop. The head turns. Are you happy there? So now I know the trunk's lying on. I've just got that much from there. The trunk's lying on. I'm going to open up the book and I'm going to turn it toward the spectator here. And now notice my head's now looking away again. So the whole time during this, the only time that you've looked toward here is apparently to ask the spectator a question, then you've looked away again. It's very, very good psychology here to get a peek on that moment. So now we're in this position where I've opened up the book, and I'm now tapping here, and I ask them, I want you to read the last few words for me, maybe even the entire sentence, and I hand the book to them. So now the book is in the spectator's hands, and they're reading the top line, which is, in this book, Camel spends his days hidden behind the trunks lying on. So remember, I got behind the trunks lying on in my peek. So right now, I'm halfway towards getting a great reveal out of this. But the images of the spectator reading the book here, reading the sentences right here, I then asked them to close the book. Now, if you're afraid that they might forget what they've read, which I never am. I've asked the spectator to read it. I say, I want you to read it, get a general theme of it. In fact, maybe just read the entire sentence and make that make sense, which doesn't mean anything, but I think that they understand clearly enough. Don't forget what's been on that page. And you're going to remind them as you go through the reveal anyway. But if you are afraid, you could hand them a bookmark or ask them, to keep their finger in the page or whatever you want. I personally have them, after they've read the book, I have them close the book and drop it to the floor, to the stage, or to a table, whatever's nearby, with the goal being to get the book out of play as quickly as possible. So this also works very well with multiple books. But I want to make a point about the general approach towards a book test. I've seen many, many, many performers, especially recently, performing a book test and focusing on the wrong elements. To me, our goal as mind readers, and what this whole DVD is about, is to focus on the process of reading the mind and the way we reveal the information. The way we really get the information should be of no consequence. It should be the least important thing. Of course, your methods need to be strong, falling, and you need to be good at them, but there should be no attention drawn to them. If I had, say, 3 or 4 books right here, and I was going to ask somebody to pick a book, the way I would do it is say, I've got a whole bunch of books right there. Grab one that looks interesting to you. Oh, that's a good choice. And now away we go. It's that simple. Grab one that looks interesting to you, because it shouldn't matter. It really shouldn't matter. The importance on the selection of book and the selection of page number. Imagine I had 4 books and I lined them up and I said, I want you to pick one of these books, but first put your hand on 2 of them and then pick up 2 and then put the other one down. And now I've got this dice and I want you to roll the dice and take the first number and add it to the bottom number and turn to that page. That, to me, is just focusing on all of the wrong moments. The method might be clever, there might be some very clever magician's choice way of you getting the right book in play. There might be some great force with a dice or with, a gimmicked book or something. But the real power in these methods is hiding them in what appears to be the casual nature. I should not, as the mind reader, look like I've begun working until it's time for me to read minds. At that moment, I'm on. However, this is all just set up. This is just what needs to be done. Like, pick a book, grab one that looks interesting to you. Okay, good. Stand right here for me. I'm going to let the pages fall like this. Whenever you want, just say the word stop. Stop. Good. I want you to just take a look at the last few. In fact, I want you to read the entire sentence for me. So now the work is done. And then as soon as they've read that sentence, the book goes down onto the table, and I've got my peek. Now we're in a position to really make things interesting. Once we've got this out of the way. So the goal is to do it as casually, without drawing attention to the wrong moments, and as effortlessly as we can from a technical perspective. I want to teach you one other method for this. Some people are uncomfortable with the notion of a peek of a lot of information in 1 second like this. The wingtip silver would be the words that I just peeked here. However, there is another method for you. I wanted to teach this method because now you have a routine where if you're out with friends, if you're in a bookstore, or if you're sitting where there are books in somebody's home, you have a method to reveal seemingly thought of word. And when we combine this methods, these mechanics, with the tools that we're going to talk about specifically with each one of these later on, you not only have an impromptu routine, you have a very strong impromptu routine. But another method for this, let's imagine there's a book sitting on the table and somebody asks you to do something. You say, okay, well, let's try something right here. What I'm going to ask you to do, I'm going to just let the book fall like this. Whenever you want, I want you to say the word stop. Stop, right there, very good. I'm going to open the book at that point. So what we've done now is rather than peek a word, we've forced a word. And the method I do this, or a sentence, the method I use for this, I pick the book up, I'm breaking the book open with my pinky on the back edge, the edge that's closest to me, the short edge, like this. I'm now just casually looking at the book, seemingly. I'm looking at the top sentence. And in this case, it's as soon as I can do it without attracting attention, I flee to. So that's obviously longer than I just took, and I got the whole sentence. But if you're in a casual situation, there's no reason why earlier on you couldn't perhaps remember, you know, a section from the book and just stick your finger in it and wait for the time to begin the trick. So either way, you either remember it in real time, he twirls the silver tips, which is what I've got right now, while the pinky's in the back. You're now basically going to perform a riffle force, much like you would with a deck of cards, but with a book. So I'm gripping the book closed, because if I let go of the pressure with my right hand here, this happens. The book will start to splay open because of the break that's created at the back edge here with the pinky. So the book is gripped in this position. I now start riffling the book. Now what happens in pushing this up, because I've got the pinky in there, it creates a step, which means that I can just let everything below that step literally ricochet off my fingers without really any effort. It will just happen because it's a natural separation that happens due to the presence of the pinky at the back edge. So as I start the riffle, I'm creating that step. I'm now timing the spectator saying the word stop to the last moment of that block of pages ricocheting off my fingers. At that moment, the pinky releases and the book is let spring open. I now take it and hand it to them to read. So now we've just forced either this page or this page, whichever one you want. So that's a way of forcing the sentence, which at times may be useful, and we'll talk about that in the tools section as well, how sometimes forcing is preferable because you're able to plot the reveal and the structure of the reveal because you're aware of what you're working with beforehand. However, I think it's really important that you do practice the standard peek method like this, because I think it will serve you very well, especially if somebody's seen the trick before and they want to see it again, but you don't have time to learn what's on there for a force. This is a nice real-time method. So that's what you need to know to make the book trick work, but it's not all you need to know to make it real mind reading. That comes later. So I want to talk to you briefly about what to do with all of these methods if you're faced with a hardcover book. Thankfully for this trick, hardcover books are becoming less and less popular in terms of bestsellers. You know, they're kind of, the majority of them are now softback, unless you talk about kind of cult classics like Harry Potter and so on, or specialist books like magic books. But generally speaking, the majority of bestsellers or travel reads or, you know, coffee table sort of books that you're going to come across are going to be paperbacks. However, if you do get a hardback, there's no reason that this method's, there's no reason that the peek method will not work. All you have to do is take the hard covers. So let's imagine this is a hardcover book. Open the covers up. It's actually much more difficult with a softback than it is with a hardback, because with a hardback the covers naturally fall open. So you just grip the book like this with the covers in their naturally open position, and now you do exactly the same mechanics, doing the same peek like this and then handing it to them and opening the book up. So the only modification is you hold the book, you let the hard covers naturally fall to their open position, which leaves the body of the book. You now grip the body of the book as you say stop, you get your peek, you now open the book and hand it over to the spectator. The man grumbles is the line that I just peeked. You now close the book up and you're good to go. But like I say, if you're faced with a choice with a softback and a hardback, a softback is always preferable just because it allows you to remove one more step during the selection process. You know, the goal again being brevity, efficiency, and to try and make it as invisible as possible in the minds of the audience when they come to reconstruct the method. So always use a paperback if faced with a choice, but if it's an emergency situation, that's how to deal with a hardback. So I want to talk to you now about the mechanics of something that I've hinted at before in print, but never really spoke about the entire scope of this and how useful this can be. The concept is to get the effect to move away from whatever the concrete proof is, in this case it's cards, into much more personal information, but to use the concrete proof in a way that gives you specific details. So now when you combine that with your tools that we're going to speak about later, it's really unstoppable. Now in this case, this is a marked deck of cards that I use for this. And I'm going to run through the scripting right now, and we're going to break down each phase of how I use this, and then we're going to talk about just the scope of this system. So the idea is, to begin with, I say, have you got a favorite card? And everybody always looks confused. Of course they haven't. I don't know anybody right now other than magicians that have favorite cards. So I interrupt them and say, of course you haven't. We've got iPods and, cable TV. Nobody's got a favorite card. But back in the day when, family entertainment was the heart of the home, having a favorite card was actually pretty popular and pretty common. And the way you did it was, each one of the cards represents something. In fact, there's a few fun facts about a deck of cards. One of which is, I don't know if you know this, but the cards have said to have been based on a calendar. With 4 suits, you've got a club, a heart, a spade, and a diamond that would mirror the 4 suits of the year. Equally, you have 13 cards in each one of these suits, which would mirror the lunar cycles of the moon. We have 52 cards in a pack, 52 weeks in a year. And if you were to add up each one of the spots on the cards, these things here, like the 10 diamonds on the 10 of diamonds and the 8 clubs on the 8 of clubs, it would actually equal 365, the number of days in a year. Some people think it's just a coincidence, but clearly they're not good conspiracy theorists like I am. So the way that people would choose their favorite cards is kind of find one that resonated with them. The heart was often thought of as being love, obviously, because of the image of a heart. The diamond, money, the notion that diamonds were, expensive commodities and rarities. The spade was considered to be kind of work, especially in the days where people were much more manual labor kind of jobs. The notion of a spade and farming and so on sort of brought back the idea of work there. And the club was considered to be health. And I don't really know, but I kind of assume that's because of the clover and the link that has back to ancient medicine, and kind of the shape of a club is reminiscent of that. So let's break right now away from the scripting. So what I've just done is explained the meaning of each one of these suits. These aren't true, these meanings. They just sound kind of real, and that's enough. Because it makes sense that a heart represents love, a diamond money, a spade work, and the club being health is kind of the weak one of them all, but I think you can skip through that without any trouble. So the goal here is to let them know what each one represents, and to do it in a way that's interesting and kind of fun. I start out with all those facts about the deck as a calendar, just because I think they're interesting and a nice lead in. Now, I'll tell you that if you add the faces of each one of the cards up, it actually equals 364. The 365 coincidence is only true if you include the Joker as one. I don't mention that in the scripting. Some people prefer to mention that in the scripting because it makes it even more real. I just kind of gloss over that and say there are 365. And there's a whole bunch more of these coincidences about a deck of cards and the calendar and so on. And if you just do a Google search, you'll come up with a whole bunch of them. But they're kind of the key ones that I think are the most interesting. So I kind of stick to those, so I don't want it to become too laden at the beginning with all of these strange coincidences. So we've now set up each one of the meanings of the suit. Now we're going to continue by setting up how you grade each one of the cards. So I would now say, so after they realise that each one of these represents something, money, health, work and love, they'd go through and kind of grade the previous month that they've had based on the meanings on the card. So for example, I've had an especially good previous month with love life, so the king, a really high valued card for that. My health is equal as it always is, so I would probably go for a 7. Finances are okay, I would probably go for again maybe a 6 or a 7 there. I'd certainly like more money, but I'm happy with the amount that I've got. And work has been medium, so maybe a 6. So you see they would actually grade each one of these elements, and their lucky card was the highest one that month. So in my case, my lucky card would become the King of Hearts. And that's what I'm going to ask you to do for me right now. You're going to go through and you're going to think about the previous month that you've had and grade each one of those elements and lay them down on the table. And the highest one is going to be your lucky card. Don't let me see which ones they are. And in fact, try not to let anybody else see it. So now we've given them the instructions to grade based on the previous month the cards. So let's say we were dealing with the spread that I just brought out, we'll just use this one, a 2, a 5, a king, and a 7. Now remember, this is a marked deck, so this spread, when it's face down, is effectively face up to me. Makes no difference to me. This is a face-up spread of cards. So I can say now, okay, so what's really interesting is, right now you know which one of these cards is your lucky card, and you know about your previous month. However, cards are also being used as a way of telling fortunes. I don't know if you've seen the tarot cards. In fact, this is reminiscent to a spread that somebody would use to read about your life. However, of course, I can't see them, so it's not really the same as using cards as a divination process. But I am going to try and make some guesses based on what I think you're like. For example, let's deal with your love life to begin with. Let's start with that category. And I'm going to... Well, a 10 comes up when I cut the cards, but I see your reaction tells me that that's probably overestimating your love life. I'm going to guess that the previous month has been probably, I don't want to say lonely, but there's not been any real movement, any real excitement or anything like that. I'm going to say that you've had a kind of weak month when it comes to new people. But don't worry about it. You know, there are plenty more fish in the sea and all of that. So you're just giving a basic sort of summary of what you're seeing on the card. This is a 2 of hearts. Clearly they haven't met their soulmate. You know, so now we move on to the next one, which is health. So let's talk about your health. You look like a relatively healthy person. I would estimate that this month has been pretty good. In fact, I would say that you actually have gone to the gym a few more times this month than you did previously, and you're quite happy about that. Now, this is just a line that I use whenever a card other than 6 comes up. Anything lower than 6, I don't say that. Anything higher than 6, I do. It seems to be something that's very common and frequently occurs. In this case, we're looking at the 5 here. I just want to include that line. So if the 5 comes up when you perform, you would not say that. However, let's switch that out for a 9. So if it's a 9 up there, I would say you've in fact been to the gym a few more times than you thought you would. Now, here, exercise your discretion. If it's an older person and they're putting a 9 down, think on your feet and think about why would this person, let's go really extreme. Let's imagine you're doing this to an 80-year-old woman that looks frail and weak. You know, she's in her 80s. She's an old 80. Why would she be so happy about her health? Think about it. Perhaps she's found out that something she was worried about is okay. She's no longer worried about something. You know, health tends to only be a problem for people, especially when we're talking about just feeding back information and reading. We only tend to worry about our health when something's not right, when we're in pain or we have a symptom or something. Other than that, we always kind of feel like we're okay. So just kind of look at the spread that you're getting and then look at the person. And this gives you all of these specific details. So right now, let's imagine it's the 9. I think that you've been to the gym a few more times than in fact you had previously. Is that correct? It is good. Let's move on to work. Work, the spade. Work. I think you've had a very good month with work. I think you're feeling very comfortable and very secure. And in fact, are feeling like there's a whole bunch of new horizons that are opening up in your career. This could have something to do with did you just finish some training or you're about to start some additional training that you think is going to be very beneficial for you? In this case, I'm gearing the reading to be very positive because we're dealing with the King of Spades, a high value. So obviously, they're feeling good about work. They're probably enthusiastic about it. They're probably looking forward to expanding their career and so on. So again, all I'm doing is feeding back what I'm seeing from the face down card. We come to the next one, which is the 7 of diamonds. I'm just reading the marks on the back. So finances with a 7, it's a medium. Now, with finances, one line that works very well, especially with men, is to say, now, you seem like a humble guy. but I would say you probably didn't really take out the card that's accurate for your financial month. I think sometimes you think that you're maybe not making as much as you should, but you need to take a second, stop, look around and realize that I think you actually did much better financially this month than you're willing to admit. Now, if that's a man that you're reading, the likelihood of him saying, no, I'm not, is so slim that it's not even worth considering. You're basically flattering this guy in front of a room full of people, but it seems very specific to everybody else. So I think that's probably true. Like, I would estimate that you would rank it kind of high. You would understand that you're doing well for yourself. It would be high, but I think the truth is you probably took out a card that was too lower than it should have been. And he will agree with you again. So now you have another solid reveal here. And again, just based on reading the back of the card. So right now, we know that the King of Spades is the lucky card. So now I'm going to say, because it's the highest value here. So now I'm going to say, I'm not really interested in any of them apart from your lucky card. Do you remember what it was? Yes. Okay, good. What I want you to do is to imagine that area of your life, wherever is the strongest for you, and based on what we've just spoke about, I would say it's probably work. That's the one that you're certainly most connected to right now. That was one of the things that just arrived instantly. Yes, okay, good. Look at me, concentrate on it. It's a very high value. I'm going to say it's either a king or a queen. How close am I? It's the king. And there it is. So I don't turn the reveal at the end, and I don't turn over the card at the end either. I'm just laying them out in this order because I know which one is where, but if a spectator was doing it, I would say it's either a king or a queen, show me. And then they would turn it over wherever it happens to be. Now, the reason I don't turn this into like a solid reveal at the end here of being, and you're thinking of the King of Spades, is because the readings that are generated based on these cards is far more interesting and far more exciting than me naming which one of these 52 pieces of cardboard they're thinking of. You're now talking about people. So, despite this being a very good way of doing it, this is not really what I want to allude to here. I want you to think of this as a system. Again, using the cards, let's imagine you walk up to somebody and you want to find out how their week has been. Now we can explain the same system and apply it to just a week. We can apply it to just that night. How has tonight been? Score it, based on this system. You have 4 different suits to choose from, and these suits can be whatever you want them to be. They don't have to be health and so on. You can create your own systems, which means whenever you meet somebody and let's say your cold reading skills are good, but you want specific details, with a marked deck you get all of this information in front of you to tailor your reading. And this kind of is something that I spoke about in another routine that I called EI, where you use this leading reading concept where the information is presented to you, and now you can combine that with the real mind reading tools that we're going to speak about in a while, and suddenly you're dealing not with just these pieces of card anymore. In fact, these are the least interesting things. The most interesting thing is the information that you're giving the spectator. And what's so beautiful about the method and the effect and everything coming together like this is the least interesting elements form the method. The thing that nobody really cares about is giving you all the information that everybody cares about. It's a really interesting way of doing things, and I hope that you see the scope of this. Take a second to think about how you can apply this to different venues that you work in, different environments, different situations. This can be about a whole bunch of different things. You've got all of these options in front of you. One that I specifically like is using it to rank ex-boyfriends or girlfriends. So for example, you can speak about are you in a relationship? You're not? Okay, good. Let's try something about somebody you were once in a relationship with. There's sort of something interesting about playing cards. They have elements of personality, like the notion of looking at the Queen of Hearts without thinking of some romantic, beautiful lady is almost impossible, but it goes far deeper than that. The hearts are thought to represent sensitivity. The clubs are thought to represent strength and sort of uniqueness and open-mindedness. And strength might be a little bit misleading. This is more about how willing was the person to experience new things and sort of how spontaneous they are and so forth. The spade is kind of the image of stability, the notion of a provider, and if he says he's going to arrive on time, he's going to arrive on time, and so on. And the diamond is financial, because as much as we don't like to admit it. We're all hardwired for the protection syndrome as men and women, and it's is he financially stable and able to look after his family? So what's really interesting is if we use this to just think about somebody from our past, sometimes it can unlock some of the unresolved issues from the past. So we need to go through and just grade somebody, pick somebody from your past, and now they go through, and now you're presented with a spread that relates directly to somebody that they knew. Now, you don't know the name of the person that they knew, but that really doesn't matter, because partway through, I will start saying things like, okay, I get the impression that this guy was, this guy wasn't your normal type. Now, I don't know a single woman that's ever dated a guy that's her type. In fact, the more you speak to people about this, and this is another core concept of real mind reading, is looking around you, paying attention and speaking to people about what they feel and why they make the decisions that they make. If you speak to the majority of women after a relationship ends, they'll decide that that guy was, I don't know why I dated him, he wasn't really my type. However, if you speak to them while they're dating him, he's absolutely their type and he's perfect. But, so we take something useful from that as mind readers, which is, I can now say, oddly, I think this guy wasn't really your normal type. Yes. I also think that this guy was slightly shorter than the other guys that you normally find yourself attracted to. Now, this is sort of a wild guess, because she could have been dating a basketball player that's 160 feet tall, or she could have been dating me, a midget who's 2 foot tall. But I think it's worth guessing this, because generally speaking, think about the fairy tale of the tall, dark, handsome prince, coming in for the princess. These things are all hardwired into us on some level from our own childhoods. So this reveal is very, very easy to make play. The notion of, I think he's slightly shorter than normal. Yeah, and there's something about his hair. There was some dispute about his hair. Every relationship I've ever been in, there's been a dispute about my hair, and there will be in every relationship everyone's in at some point. There's some dispute about his hair. Now, you'll see the big reaction here, because you'll know, it's either it was something like, he had hair down to the bottom of his back and she hated it, or, he shaved his hair. The big reactions, it's something like that. A small reaction, skip over it, move into other stuff. But remember, all of these guesses that I'm talking about right now are interwoven with the 4 cards on the table that give you specifics. So if we use let's just take a sample spread, and then I'm going to leave you to hopefully appreciate the true scope of this, using a marked deck as a tool for grading life around you. Let's just take a basic spread here. Club, heart, spade, diamond. So let's say the spread was the 8 of clubs, the 3 of hearts, 5 of spades, 5 of diamonds. We know in terms of him being spontaneous and creative and individual, he was kind of middle of the row, less than middle, in fact. The diamond, not financially strong. The heart sensitivity is a 3, so weak. And the club here, relatively strong. An 8 is a strong ranking, which now means, of course, we can start saying basic reveals linked into each one of these. So in between our guesses, I would say something like, yeah, I think there was a dispute about, I don't know if it was your hair or his hair, but it's definitely something about hair. And in fact, that triggers another memory for you. When I say something like that, you realize, was there some time when he just did not understand why you were so upset that he hadn't noticed something? And I know that sounds vague, but I mean, that this links into the bigger picture with him. He wasn't the most sensitive of guys. Of course he wasn't the most sensitive of guys. She gave him a 3 when it comes to sensitivity. So now we're just wrapping what we know around what we know from our previous life. We know this to be fact. Now we're just using our own experiences and genuinely being empathic towards the way she's reacting and paying attention to the girl that you're doing the routine for. And in that way, we can create something that's way more than just about the playing cards. Now it's really about her past, her personal experiences. And this isn't just about lucky cards or about, the past month for work, health, or about ex-lovers. It can be about anything that you choose these cards to be about. Right now, you should have an endless amount of tricks that you can do just on that. I think it's a really exciting concept, and you can see in the performance footage how it elevates, especially with the tools that we're going to talk about, into something much more than a card trick. So go and get yourself a marked deck. So now you've learnt the physical mechanics of the card reveal, let's talk about some of the tools that we've got at our disposal. To start with, I want to talk about the cards themselves, and let's think about common mistakes that happen. So for example, if we get an ace, a lot of normal people do not know whether this card is high or low. You'll see why this is important later on. Equally, the jack, the queen, and the king. A lot of normal people do not know that we refer to these as picture or court cards. A lot of people, if you ask them, if they're thinking of a king or a queen or a jack, and I say, when you think about the number of the little things on it, the number of the clubs on it, they'll be confused because there's not a number on these cards. Again, that's going to be useful later on. Sixes and nines give us a very easily understood mistake. You know, the fact that a 6 and a 9, reverse it, would be exactly the same, gives us a mistake that we're going to talk about in a while. Now, of course, we have odds and evens. So really what I want to talk about with playing cards is the fact that the only way I believe that you can turn revealing a card into a little bit more than just a card trick is by establishing a process, explaining and breaking down how you would work out what a card was. Also, the justification of using cards in a mind-reading trick. Now, I personally don't worry about justifying the presence of cards. However, if anybody was to ever push me on it, I would say, well, you know, what's really interesting about a pack of cards is that on one level they represent, on their simplest level, a bunch of different colours, shapes, and numbers. On another, they're items that we can easily and quickly differentiate from each other, and on another level they're kind of interesting because people spend so much money on them. People gamble here in Las Vegas that the fate of an entire fortune can be lost on one of these, and I'm going to ask you to think about one of them right now. So that would just be a little bit of scripting there that kind of justifies the presence of playing cards, but I don't think it's necessary. I think you just say, I'm going to ask you to think of a card for me, and I'm going to go through the pack or get them to pull back on the cards, whatever technique you prefer. So let's pick a card at random that's been chosen, and then we'll talk about each one of those general, the ace being high, low, the jack, queen, king, the 6 and the 9, and then a process. Let's pick a card at random. So let's go here, which is the 6 of spades. Let's get back to that one because I want to talk about these later on. Okay, wow. There we go, the 5 of diamonds. Let's just use the 5 of diamonds as an example. So if the 5 of diamonds has been chosen, I'm going to establish a process. Now really think about it. What would you do if you were trying to guess what the card was? If you were playing 20 questions about what this card was that the person was thinking about it. The first thing that you're going to do is narrow down whether the card is red or black. You know, that cuts out 26. So the first thing I'm going to do as the mind reader is have them concentrate on whether the card is red or black. Now with me, I try and remove the idea of sight in this. I don't want them to be thinking about seeing the card. So I go with something that I call the sensation reveal, where I talk about, so let's say they're thinking of the 5 of diamonds. I would say, this is what I want you to do. I want you to imagine, obviously your card could be red or black, because that's all that they make. But I want you to imagine if it's a red card that you're thinking of, something very, very hot. If it's a black card, something cold, maybe fire and ice. Oh, what's really interesting right there, I just said to you think of something really, really hot, and then I told you fire and ice, but that isn't how you thought about it originally. It never is. You're just stating the obvious right now, but you're doing it in a way that is seemingly reading their mind in real time. Oh, that's not how you thought about it. When I said think of something really, really hot, I think you thought of another place, like a destination. This is 99% of the time going to hit. If you ask somebody to think of something hot, somewhere hot, which is the scripting. If it's a red card, I want you to think of something hot, somewhere hot. If it's a black card, think of something cold, like fire and ice. The somewhere right there vanishes in amongst everything else that we say, but it leads them in the direction that you want them to go in. Because right now I want one moment where I seemingly read their mind in real time. So I'll stop them and say, that's interesting. When I mentioned fire and ice, that's not how you thought about it. You thought of a physical place, right? Yes. Is this somewhere that you've been? Yeah, it was a vacation that you took. Now, if obviously right now I'm assuming that they're saying the word yes. If they said no, they haven't been there, my response would be, okay, it's somewhere that you've thought about going, correct? Yes. So now we have something other than the cards in there. We have a real-time moment and something other than the cards. So I say, okay, good. Look at me. So just think about whether it's fire or ice for me, if it's hot or it's cold. You know, I can't help but notice it gets a lot warmer right now. I'm definitely feeling some of the heat right now. I'm going to tell you it's a red one that you're thinking of. Is that right? Yes. So I talk about myself right now. I'm feeling like it's warm, so it must be a red one. And now the next part of this, so it feels like it's got a lot warmer for me, so it must be a red one. It's interesting, right? When you start to think about things in terms of whether they're, you know, hot and cold like that, that heat that you start to feel in your fingertips and kind of your toes, you got that too, right? I can sense that you got that. Yes. They will always recognize that in the moment. So now we have another real-time read right there. Now the next thing that I'm going to do is ask them to count the number of spots on the card. Now I'm going to explain what the spots are. I'm going to say, obviously it could be, if it's a red one, it could only be a heart or a diamond. What I want you to do is just in the back of your head, start screaming what that card is. Don't say anything out loud, but in the back of your mind, imagine that you're screaming at me whether the card's a heart or a diamond. But right now what I want you to do in between us is imagine a big blank surface, and you're going to count the number of the things, you know, like the hearts or the diamonds, however many there are. However many there are. You're going to count the number of them. Okay, good. And start for me. You just stopped, correct? Yes, and I'm doing this with my hands, and you'll see them react. Now, here I could say, I want to count the number of spots on the card. Do it in your mind for me. Are you done? Yes, it's 5. But why eliminate the potential of creating one more moment that's seemingly real time? And you'll see this later again with the book. It's actually more effective, I believe, with a word than it is with a card. However, I still think it's worth doing with a card. So why take out the opportunity of me seemingly knowing the moment that they stopped counting? Of course I know the moment they stopped counting because I know it's a 5. So all I have to do is count to 5 in my head and say, you just stopped. If I tell them to start, there's a very good chance that we're going to stop at the same time. It's unlikely that somebody's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's unlikely they're going to break the rhythm. The majority of the time they'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, especially with the setup where I say I want you to imagine each one up in the air and count how many of them there are. So now they do that in their mind. I look slightly through them, which is really uncomfortable. If somebody looks through you, it feels like they're not paying attention to you, but they are at the same time. It's a very odd sensation. So I look slightly through them as I'm mimicking in the air 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You just stopped, right? It's 5. As if I'm hearing them, because think about this, if you were counting to a number that I didn't know, it would be a case of me not knowing if you had stopped or if you were pausing. Right? Like if I say, think of a number and they're thinking of the number 9, you would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and stop. I might not know if I was hearing this in my head whether you were pausing or you had finished. So my reaction is, you just finished, correct? Yes, good. Well then it's got to be a 5. It's a 5? Yes. And you can really stop that screaming. You've done brilliantly. It's the 5 of diamonds. And now I reveal the whole name at the end. So in just one moment, taking a random card, we've put in a sensation reveal, a moment where we go away from the cards, but only because we led their thinking away from the cards, but seemingly we realized that they were thinking in another way and revealed that. We then had a moment where we told them to start counting and we revealed the moment that they stopped, which doesn't sound strong, but all layered together is incredibly strong. And then finally the moment where we reveal the entire card. Now let's go back to those common mistakes and how we can exploit them. So with an ace, this is the most obvious. I would do all of the same pattern that I just described to you with the red and the black, the hot and the cold. Think of something hot, somewhere hot, or something cold like fire and ice. Oh, that's not how you imagined this, but that's interesting. You're kind of confused for a second, right? It's almost like you thought of somewhere that was really hot, like a location. Is this a vacation that you took or something? Yes. But then you instantly went over to the other side. I'm going to say your card must be black. because I'm feeling cold right now. So again, it's seemingly real time, but because I'm setting them up with that language, I can predict their thought pattern. I'm going to say, I want you to think of something hot, somewhere hot. They're going to think of somewhere hot. I'm then going to say, or if it was black, think of something cold, like fire and ice. They've already done the first section of the instruction because I've asked them to do it before I've offered them the end of the instruction, which means I can reveal the first revelation before the second and look like I picked up on that from the way they were thinking. So now you're getting into real time and something that really would look like mind reading if this was happening. If you asked me to do something and you could tell me what I did along the way, that's what real mind reading would look like, not writing it down on a whiteboard and covering it with a flap, you know, and it being a staged version of Mental Epic. It would be about the mental detours that we take from the beginning to the end. So if we can plot those in there, and this is how we do it with the red and the black cards, all the better. So let's continue with the red and the black cards. So something hot, somewhere hot, or if it was black, maybe, you know, something cold, like fire and ice. Oh, that's interesting. I get the impression that there's an element of confusion here. In fact, you're very confused. Yeah, I get it now. I think you focused on somewhere hot, like a vacation. Did you just think about somewhere you went on vacation? Yes or no? Oh, it's somewhere you thought about going. Okay, but then I would say your card's black though, because as soon as I instantly just got cold. So you must be focusing on black. Is that correct? Yes. Good. Now what I want you to do is to imagine you're screaming the suit at me. Don't say anything out loud, but in the back of your head, just let it scream over and over again, the suit. Good. Keep doing that, don't say anything out loud. And now I want you to count the number of them, if you know, the clubs or the spades, whatever it is, count how many there are. Okay, that's stop, let's do this, let's break this down further. If it's a high card, just in your head think high. If it's a low card, think low. Okay, I don't really understand this. It can't be high and low at the same time. Now there's a reaction, and on an ace, I will guarantee you 100% of the time, or 90% of the time that you do this, especially with women, there will be a reaction on that moment where you say it can't be high and low at the same time. Now, as soon as I say that, I seemingly work out what's happened. So I would say, oh, it can't be high and low at the same time. I know what this is. It's an ace, isn't it? Yeah, because it can be 1 or 11. It's an ace, and it's the ace of clubs. So now we've recognized her confusion, and she thought to herself when I say, count how many there are, oh, actually, abandon that. Let's do it to make it slightly easier. If it's higher or lower. She's now going, I don't know if it's high or low, and I'm recognizing that. But of course I know that's going to happen because it's something that happens all the time with an ace. So why not put that in? You know, what the core concept of this is about, the whole idea is the physical trick is not the effect. The trick is the beginning and the end. You know you have the strong revelation at the end. You know the card. Why on earth do we need to run to that point? Let's try and make something really amazing happen in between the beginning and the end, knowing that when we do finish the trick, we've got a strong finish anyway. In the middle is our time to play and make it seem really real and really strong. So let's deal with other common cards that we outlined earlier. If it's a jack, a queen, or a king, everything remains the same up until the point where I say, I'd like you to think about, so let's imagine it's a jack, a queen, or a king. I would say, okay, so what I want you to do is to imagine between me and you the exact number of whatever it is, a spade or a club. You're just going to see them in the air exactly as they are on the card. Okay, that's weird. I get the impression that, okay, this happens every now and again. You think in pictures, correct? Yes. Everybody thinks in pictures. I don't know anybody that thinks in words. You know, like, you think in pictures, is that correct? Yes. And that's kind of odd, because when I asked you how many there were, you did count them, but that doesn't really matter, does it? Because you counted them and realized that was wrong. Again, you're just saying what naturally is going to happen. If people are not sure what to do with this, I'm just going to say what's going to happen. So you did count them, but that doesn't really matter. But then after that point, you know, I asked you to just picture this kind of white space between us, and right now it's just full of color. So I'm going to say it's a jack, a queen, or a king, because that's the only cards in the pack that are just full of color. So now, seemingly, I've recognized that she took what was white in my instruction to visualize a white screen with the number of pips on it and filled it with color, which is what will happen because I'm asking her to visualize the card in the air. So now again, I get a seemingly real-time reveal that she did this without me asking. So how would I know that? How would I know that she's going to do that? Even if I did know the card? Well, we know how because we're just going to try and lead people into these directions and then reveal them. You know, it's like we're springing the trap and then at the end getting applause for it. But these are all things that together create a much more real and compelling feeling, and for the performer it's way more fun. And that also translates, which I think is really important. So that's how I deal with a jack, a queen, or a king. Now once I narrow it down to being a jack, a queen, or a king, I'll say this. If it's a king, I'll say to the person, okay, this is what I want you to do for me. It's either a jack, a queen, or a king. This is going to sound weird, but they're kind of people, like, you know, the king, the jack, and the queen, they're kind of people. Imagine somebody you know that kind of reminds you of whatever the one is that you're thinking of. If it's a king and it's a woman, it'll either be a husband or a dad. If it's a jack and it's a woman, it'll be a son or a brother. If it's a woman and it's a queen, it's likely to be a daughter or a sister. Very rarely the mother for a queen, for some reason. I think probably the notion of you know, like kings and queens, and we don't really think of our parents as being, you know, like little girls kind of imagine being a queen, I suppose. I don't really know why, but I'm telling you that tends to be what happens. So now you just make this reveal work based on the basic ideas of what these cards are. So for example, if it was the king, I would say, okay, think about somebody that makes, okay, I get what this is right now. I think it's your father you're thinking of. It's the king of spades. Is that correct? Now I don't give her the opportunity to correct the fact that the father may not have been right. I ask her only one confirmation. I think it's your father that you're thinking of, and it's the king of spades. Is that correct? That's when I bring my eye contact to her. To the audience, it seems that she's agreeing to everything. In reality, she's confirming that I've said it is indeed the king of spades. So that's how we do with that one. The 6 and the 9 is an internal confusion, not an external, because it's unlikely that anyone's going to confuse a 6 for a 9 when they see it. However, if you were the mind reader, you might. So if it was a 6 or a 9, I would say something like, I want you to imagine in a big white screen in front of us, the number that appears on the card for me. Just see the number. Okay, good. That's very weird. It's kind of spinning for me, but does that make sense to you? It's like upside down, then it's the other way up, then it's the right way up, then it's... But it's constantly... It's not an 8, it's kind of like, I know what this is. I know what this is. It's a 6 or a 9, because if you turn them up either way, it's going to look the same. Is that right? Yes. Okay, good. Do me a favor. Don't just focus on it being still. Do me a favor, just focus on it being still. She wasn't focusing on it being anything other than still, but now I create the moment where seemingly she was making it spin in her mind, which is why I got confused. So do me a favor, just focus on this being still. It's the 6, yes? Thank you very much. That was great. Keep thinking like that. So now seemingly I'm thanking her for thinking in the way that I need to reveal it when she wasn't thinking any other way in the first place. But it's again one moment where I get the credit for revealing seemingly what's happening in the moment instead of just what the cards would tell me. So that's how I deal with 6 and 9s, aces, jacks and queens and kings. And then the red, the black, the real-time mind reading, everything just from a card peek. And this is really what we need to remember here is that we have the mechanics to make the miracle, but we don't take the journey properly. We don't open the door and bring them in and really expand upon what we have. And it's only when we start using these additional layered techniques that something like peeking a card can become so much more in the minds of the audience. So really go out and start doing this stuff and you'll see the impact it has. And then do what I do. This is what I do as my card reveal in when I work. This is how I handle card reveals. Every now and again, just do it the old way. Just say, look at a card, okay, good. Focus on it for me. It's the 8 of hearts. And see the difference in the reaction. You'll notice how much more real it feels when you do it this way. But this brings up another very important point. If, for example, you were doing a multiple card routine where 3 people had looked at cards, revealing each card in this way would detract. I believe the right way to handle multiple cards is to reveal one like this where you show the process and now the other 2 are done at much quicker paces. So for example, we would finish it's the King of Spades, is that correct? Good. Look at me. What I want you to do, exactly like she did, I know you've been playing along because it's been confusing and distracting while I've been trying to work with her, but I appreciate your enthusiasm. They may not have been playing along. Think about what I just said. It's a way. You have to realize how powerful language is with these things. I know you've been playing along and visualizing your cards because it was confusing for me and distracting when I was working over here, but I do appreciate your enthusiasm. I've just said that I was reading their minds at the same time, and I know that they were following my instructions at the same time. They may have not been, but the audience does not know that. But it's again language. It's learning how to talk like a mind reader. It's like a different vocabulary. So we say, I know you've been thinking about it already, and I know that you've been playing along. It's kind of distracting, but I do appreciate your enthusiasm. But what I want you to do for me is very simple. Right here and right here, just picture your cards in their exactly how they look. I'm feeling quite warmed up from you, and you did really good sending me those images. But right now, I'm going to tell you that. Oh, I don't know who has which. I think weirdly this one is yours and this one is yours. You have the Jack of Hearts and you have the King of Spades, correct? Yes. I don't know which one is which. What does that mean? What am I even assigning to? I don't know which one is which. Oh, you have this one and you have that one. You're the Jack of Hearts and you're the King of Spades. Thanks so much for your help. So now I'm again creating turmoil in my process from nothing. Like none of this is real, none of it exists, but that's our job. The whole point of being a mind reader is not in having clever gimmicky books or having, mark decks and card peaks and all the rest of it. The point is learning how to make everything into something. The great mind readers like Alexander and Anna Eva Fay and more modern, Donninger, for example, knew the power of language and knew the power of speaking like a mind reader. And when you start this stuff and when you start doing it, it becomes second nature. And to break it down is almost impossible. But I hope that right now these elements, and certainly when you listen to this and contrast and compare it to the performances, you'll see how they work, how it comes together and creates the bigger goal. So that's a method for revealing cards. But remember, the whole point of all of this is that these things are transferable and applicable in any of the routines that you do currently. Again, it's more of an approach and a system than it is a solid trick. So there it is, that's what we do with cards. Okay, so I want to talk to you now about the tools of revealing a word from a book. The mechanics we're going to imagine are done. Now we're going to start dealing with the ways to expand upon what we have to make it feel very real. The first thing I want to talk about is, during the peak here, I'm looking at the words. Obviously, I can see a whole bunch of words, and then saying, I want you to look at the last words in the page. So I'm just going to open the book and pick some words so that we can talk about them. Let's say I'd got rubber-capped legs making it land, which is this is an interesting book, Water for Elephants. I should probably read it. So far, every single page has been an interesting word. So rubber-capped legs making it land. That's what I know they're reading. So now I would say, this is what I want you to do. I want you to pick a particularly interesting word from what it is that you've read and go with that and just kind of focus on that word. So right now, already we're taking people off of guard, because if we had read the words, how would I know which word somebody was going to pick from that group of words? Well, it's down to the language. I want you to think of an interesting word. Maybe go for something. I'm now in my head trying to lead them to think of the word rubber. But remember, I know all of the words in this. So I would say, I want you to think of an interesting word. Maybe something, certainly medium length, at least 4 letters and above. Now, I say medium length here because I don't want anyone to feel like an idiot. A 4-letter word is not a medium length word. However, with the options that I've got right here, if I had one word in the peak that was 8 letters and the rest were like 4 or 5-letter words, I would say go for a very long word, like 6, 7, 8 letters maybe. So now I've definitely hit it. But with rubber, I'm just going to deal with rubber as being the reveal. So go for an interesting word, something certainly between 4 and 6 letters long. So now in 99% chance, they're thinking of the word rubber, especially in that sentence, because there's no other word that long in that sentence. But again, how would I know this? Like it's all logical disconnect. Now, it's the goal with this, of course. I say, how would I know this? If you'd view it on a extremely analytical level, of course I would know it because I just told her to think of the long word. However, remember the goal with these instructions is to create the illusion of freedom while restricting the choice. So the idea is, I want you to think of an interesting word, maybe 4-6 letters long, and the instruction is almost under my voice, and it's under my breath, and it's just to her. So okay, so you're focusing on an interesting word. This is what I'm going to ask you to do. Right now, I'm going to ask you to count the number of letters in the word, but you're not going to start until I snap my fingers. At that point, start at the beginning and just scan your way across, counting how many of them there are. Okay, and go. You just stopped, correct? Yes. So this is the same thing that we do with the cards. You just stopped, correct? Yes. Okay, so that's six letters, correct? Yes. But notice I'm looking at the pad and counting them. I know it's 6 letters, but I'm going, okay, so that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's 6 letters in the word, yes? As if I was just going 1, 2, 3, just reading them and just writing them down. It's just a small bit, but I always do that. So that's 6 letters, correct? Yes, okay, good. Have you ever been to Las Vegas? Yeah, well, in Vegas we have those big signs for the casinos that flash on and off. Like the Wynn or Caesar's Palace, those big like neon signs. I want you to imagine up in the air right now, whatever the word is that you're thinking of in that kind of way. See it up in the air for me. And then I want you to think of, maybe toward the middle, think of a letter for me. Okay, good. Oh, that's really interesting. You went to the middle, but then you switched. Oh, and I get this. This must be a letter. Yeah, I get this. You thought of one letter, you switched to another, and then you went back to the original one. Now, this is something I'm really ballsy with this, but everybody that sees me work comes up to me afterwards, especially magicians and mentalists, and say, how did you know she thought of one, switched, and went back? How do I know that she did that? Because 90% of people do that when you ask them to make a choice. So I'm going to play to the masses on this, because when I miss, it really doesn't matter. Let's imagine that it misses, and that's the small potential that it misses. You thought of a letter, then you switched to one, and then you came back. No, I didn't. Okay, that's weird. Did you start at the beginning and sort of scan toward the middle? Yes, that explains it then. Oh, no, I get this. I get what this is. No, it wasn't that at all. It's the fact that there are 2 letters that are the same in this word. So now we're out of that again. But this is only going to work with the word rubber. This is how I'd handle it in this situation because there are 2 B's. So now it would kind of make sense because they're thinking of, they will confirm this. And now I would say yes. And in fact, I think that letter is. And now I fill in up here, not here, because if I did it here, it would clue them to the fact that I know the position of this letter, which I should not know yet. Because right now all I should know is the number of letters in the word and whatever letter they were thinking of, not where it goes. I would only know where it goes if I knew what the word was. And if I know what the word is, then why am I wasting their time? It's the same syndrome as when we see a mentalist doing something like, think of a word, okay, look at me, concentrate on it, really think about it for me. Okay, I'm getting, the mists, the fogs are clearing. It's the word is something like hat or cat, yes? C-A-T, cat, thank you very much. But it gets better than that. I have a prediction envelope on the table. Let's open it. It's the word cat. The worst trick in the world, the most insulting trick in the world. If you knew that word was cat, why did you waste my time pretending you were reading my mind before you would show me the prediction? It makes no sense. The real way you would do that is think of a word for me. Okay, yes, I think that's it. What did you think of? Cat. Good. Right here from the beginning, I've had something. You would be excited that they had got it right. You wouldn't be reading their mind. Just because you can do that moment in the trick doesn't mean you should. So this is the same syndrome right here. Just because we know where this goes, this is not the right time to reveal where it goes. If you do reveal where it goes, then it actually clues them in the wrong direction. So I would write the letter B in this instance. And I would say, in a clear voice, what's the letter? Just the letter. This is another common problem, especially with word tests. People asking in a clear voice, what are you thinking of? And I confess that I've learnt this through experience, not not any other way. And you can be in a really awful situation where you've got one letter up on the pad and the person says rubber, because they think you're asking them about the word, not the letter. So the clarity of instruction here has to be very strong. We have to make sure, I say, in a loud, clear voice, not the word itself, just the letter you were thinking of. What is it that you thought of? B, and there it is, B. Now, why is it B? You probably didn't hear in the scripting because your brain deletes it. I ask the person to go to the middle of the word. Now, in this case, with 6 letters, there is no discernible middle. However, with the word rubber, the letters are the same. So B and B, this is definitely the middle. You know, like, hopefully that makes sense. This is definitely the middle of the word, the 2 B's in the word rubber, because it's surrounded by the other 2 letters. So it's definitely going to be a B. So how do I know what she's thinking of? Because I tell her what to think, and then I make it look like I'm revealing it in real time. Now let's choose another word. Now we've got the double letter. Oh, in fact, let's finish how we reveal this, and then I'll choose another word and speak to you about it. So B, okay, perfect. This is what I want you to do. See the word up here again for me in big kind of block capitals. Excellent. Yeah, the two that are the same, there's like this and this. There's also a this, and a this, and a this. Okay, I know what this word is now, I think. I think I've got enough from you to work it out. Now, what I've written on the pad here is R-E-B-B-U. So it's the correct letters, but in the wrong order. So what I'm doing now is I'm looking at what I've apparently received and saying, yes, I think I know what this is now. Now we tear this page off, and now we write rubber. Apparently, the last step is not mind reading for me. The last step is, oh, of course, that's, yes, okay. And now I write it down. So that's for the word rubber, but let's pick another word from the book so we can talk about another way of doing this. Right, let's say it was the word without, which is on this page right here. We would use the same setup to get them to think of the word without. Now, if we were doing the middle letter reveals, I would say, I want you to think about the word, see it in front of you like this. In fact, go maybe toward the middle of the word and think of one of the letters for me. Okay, that's interesting. I get the impression that you went to the middle, but then you switched to another letter and then you came back. Is that correct? Yes. Okay, this is what I think happened here. And now I'm addressing the audience, not the spectator, and the spectator cannot see the pad either. This is what I think happened here, and don't say anything out loud. Always caution the audience not to say anything, because sometimes, in fact, even when you do caution the audience to not say anything, I've had, for example, in drawing duplications where I've made the drawing and I say, I have a joke in my show that revolves me showing the drawing, and I always say, do not say what this is, but do you understand what that is? And even when I say do not say what this is, every now and again somebody will go, yeah, it's a cat, or whatever it is. So remember to caution the audience. Don't say anything out loud, and we're working with the word without, remember. So the middle letters of without, obviously we have the W, the I, the T, the H, the O, the U, the T. So the middle letters are going to be 1, 2, so we've already done all of this stuff. Now at this point, I don't like to take any chances. So I'm spelling the word, and during me doing this, when I'm going to reveal the number of letters, I'm going W-I-T-H. I've hit the middle, O-U-T. So now I know H and O, W-I-T-H-O. I've spotted the middle letters myself, and I've got a visual reference for it. I can visualize the word on a pad. Why take chances when you don't need to? So now I know that the middle letters are H and O, I do this. I say, okay, this is what happened. Does that make sense? The audience nod, and I say, yes. I think you started there and you went there. Now I'm pointing in the opposite way than I've written on the pad, which is important. I'm saying, I think you started there and you went there, where on the pad, the H is the one that's larger. So now I say, in a clear voice, not the word, just the letter, what's the letter that you're thinking of? Now if they say O, I've hit it, apparently. If they say H, I've hit it, apparently. Look where my hands are with the pad and the pen. So whatever they say, I'm going to add the arrow to the pad after they tell me. So now, if it's let's say they did say H, was what they were thinking of. With the pad held here, I would have the pen here. I would come up and just add a line and say, it's exactly what I thought. Look, and I think you went from the O to the H. Is that correct? Yes. I just draw the arrow in afterwards. Nobody has ever called me on it. And this kind of bold stuff is what elevates it. This is something that I'm extremely proud of, this method of revealing letters. It's based on something that appeared in Banachek's phenomenal book, Psychological Subtleties 1, still one of my favorite books ever written on mentalism, actually. And it was based on something he had in there called the brain game, which was essentially saying to somebody, imagine the word, mix the letters up, and then think of one. And there were some tricks to try and work out where they would mix the letters into and so forth. And I did that for years. And then I switched to this version, and my success rate shot through the roof. And for the last 3 or 4 years, I've been using this version of it. And only in maybe the last 2 years have I added the changing your mind between letters, and then the arrow ambiguity as well. This is incredibly strong when you do it for an audience. You will love the reactions that you get from it. But really the message here is, all I've done with this reveal is extended what I knew and basically fed what I know back to them in a way that feels like it's mind reading, and paid attention to what that would be like. So the key features for me are the start and stop reveal, where I say start counting for me, or think of an interesting word. So now seemingly they pick any word. Then it's the start and stop reveal, count the number of letters in the word for me. You just finished looking at the pad to count the number of letters. Now this section here with the thought of letters changing, from here to here. Then finally I understand what this is, filling the remaining letters in on the pad. So for example, if I was doing this, I would say, I want you to scan from the beginning over here, and a staging point for mentalists that comes up while I'm doing this. Coordinating a pad and a pen in your hand, especially if you've got a microphone at the same time, is very difficult. The first thing, have the mic on a stand so that your hands are free. I don't know why that's such a difficult thing to why it took me a 1.5 years of working professionally before I realized that I could put the mic on the stand. I was young, I was all right. But the most important thing is I don't ever recap the pen. The cap of the pen stays clipped between my fingers here, which is holding the pad, which means when I want to get rid of the pen, I just do this, and this hand is free to reach for the mic, and now the pen can come straight back out again. It makes everything much, much smoother for me to do it in this way. As a staging note, just a general piece of advice. But so now if I was doing this, I would say, okay, so I think you went from here to here in a clear voice. What was it you were thinking of? The letter H. Good, and I think you started on the O, is that correct? Now I walk into the spectator and say, I think you started on the O. I look for their confirmation to me before I point it out to the audience. I think you started on the O, is that correct? Yes. And it was the O that you started on, yes, and then you switched to the H, yes, and back again, yeah. So after she confirms, if she says no, I just move right on. Nobody knows. I'm doing this under the reaction from this. So now if it was the word without, we're in this position. Okay, I want you to scan from the beginning right the way through to the end of the word for me. Okay. They just kind of come through. Okay, I think I can work out what this is. These were the letters that I were getting. Now, obviously, I've just written other letters from the word, but I'm doing it in a really scrambled manner. It's not in the exact position. Now I'm going to turn over the page on the pad, and I'm going to write the word without, so we'll do that. Like this. I cap the pen at this point, and the pen goes away. Because at this point, I don't want the pen to be anywhere near what I'm going to reveal. I hold this out here. I look at it. I look at her. Okay, good. In a clear voice, what was the word? Without. Without. Now we turn the pad around and reveal that we're correct. So that's how I stage the final moments. And like I say, this is something I'm very proud of. Since I came up with my handling of it from the inspiration in Banachek's book, it kind of has gone in such a different direction that to me, it's as close to the real deal with very little method as you're going to get. So this is the change your mind letter reveal, where I reveal that the spectator has changed their mind. So that's that with a book. And I think if you handle it right, you can probably start a cult. Okay, so the last thing that I want to talk about on this DVD is really everything. I was with a magician recently and he said to me, there are too many tricks and not enough time. And my response was, there's only one trick and there's forever, which is kind of pretentious of a response, but I think it's the right answer. To me, if you're a mind reader, the only trick is reading minds. The only trick is telling people about people. The only trick is talking about what's going on in their head. All of the clever card tricks and so on, they're great, and you can rock a room with them and you can do them really well and people can really enjoy it. But for me, the core of all of it is one trick, and that's telling people about people. And the system I spoke about earlier with this trick itself is so encompassing that you can tell people about people for forever with this trick. There's one thing that I want to talk about, and even though it's only one thing, it expands into multiple areas. And that is the obvious distraction, is what I call it. It is, now let's imagine, for example, we see a performer that has somehow secretly learned some information about a person, such as what they do for a living, or perhaps where they where they went to university. Let's use those two examples. Seeing them inject these reveals in amongst the other tricks that they're doing often leaves me, and I believe the audience, with no other explanation than he somehow found that out. Because it comes in such a, it just makes no sense the way it's combined with the trick. It will be, in the middle of something, you say, oh, and look at me, I believe that you went to university in San Francisco. And it just makes no sense. Why, how did you know that, other than you just found that out? So for me, the answer to this is the obvious distraction. But it goes much further than that. It works with hot reading, which of course is the opposite of cold reading. Cold reading being the ability to work with somebody and give a reading based on no prior information. A hot reading being, you have certain things that you've somehow found out about the person beforehand, which you're going to feed back to them. So it works with a hot reading very well. It also works with cold reading very well. And I'm going to give you two lines that I use all the time that are cold reading lines, but I think are incredibly specific lines. And I've been using them for a while, and the majority of the time that other performers see me use them, they believe that this is either a pre-show reveal or a hot reading reveal, but the truth of the matter is they're two cold reading lines that are very strong. And it wouldn't be for the fact that somebody at Penguin Magic saw me do them the other night and I ended up getting into a conversation with them about it that I'm putting it on here. So I'm giving everything up in this one. These two lines I've been holding on to for a while. However, how do we bring them up? Well, it's the obvious distraction. So let's explain what that is first. The obvious distraction is, let's imagine we have somebody focused on a playing card with the peak from earlier. How do I go from them thinking about a playing card, or in the same breath thinking about the word in a book, to revealing something like, I think you have thought very, very, very seriously about writing a children's book. How do I bring that into the scope of what I'm doing without it sounding like it's something I just know about them? Well, the way I do it is, and I'm going to talk specifically about how it works with the people trick, the system that I explained after I just used this basic example. Let's imagine we're halfway through revealing the word in a book. I would stop and say, this is really weird. Are you distracted right now? The answer will be no. I would say, that's weird, because I'm picking up something that's got nothing to do, well, I suppose it has got something to do with this. Something about a children's book that's sort of in the back of your mind that's making it hard for me. I don't think you've written a children's book, but I think you've thought about it. Is that right? Yes. So now it's only a very small bit, but I'm giving reason to how I can reveal that. I'm saying, there's something in the back of your mind that's sort of ticking away. It's probably been there for a long while, but it's kind of distracting right now. Something about a children's book. I don't think you've written a children's book, but have you thought about it? Yes. So that's a cold reading line that you should go and try immediately. You should press pause. You should go into the street and say that to somebody, and you'll be amazed of the fact that it seems everybody on earth has thought about writing a children's book, which sounds very specific. But nonetheless, everybody's thought about writing a children's book, apparently. So the obvious distraction is at any moment that you want to feed something else in that you feel is going to hit, you just play a red flag. It's like, time out. just like, time out, I can't do this. There's something distracting you. They will always say no, because at that moment nothing is. But I say, well, it's distracting me. I think it's probably something that's been in the back of your head for a while. And then I make the reveal. Now, let's talk about if it's information that we know. If it's information we know, such as where they went to university, it would be very hard to say, is something distracting you right now? Yes, you're thinking of where you went to university. Nobody's going to be thinking about that. That's not going to be in the back of their head. What might be in the back of their head, based on their age group, is student debt, student loan. It might be also that they're still thinking about going back to either to finish something or to extend study. So again, all you're thinking about right now is like humanity and what happens around you. To be a good mind reader, all you have to do is open your eyes and look at what happens and pay attention to what happens in your own life and in the lives of the people around you. So with, for example, the university, I would say something like, okay, stop a second. Is something distracting you right now? No. Well, it's distracting me. I think it's something that's in the back of your head, and maybe something happened this week. I think it's kind of recent, but it's something about education, and I mean kind of university or something. Student loans, does that mean anything? And that's all I'll say. Student loans, does that mean anything? And the amount of times you hit on that, because everybody's concerned about student loan. However, another one, obviously that's not going to work for the 45-year-old attorney. Like that's a bad choice for that person, because it's unlikely that they're concerned with student loan. They're past that, they've, been working for a long while, that's done. So with them, it would be this. There's something, I don't know how recently this is, but it's certainly lingering in the back of your head. I get the impression of education, but that's not what's concerning you. Is there somebody from your university days that you keep saying you're going to get in touch with and haven't? Everybody's got somebody that they keep saying they're going to get in touch with, especially now with Facebook and with Friends Reunited and Friendster and all of these networking sites on the internet where people can find people based on schools. This is becoming even more frequent. So what I'll now say as well, and I only added this in when I realized that, Facebook was no longer the domain of 20-somethings to 30-somethings. It's now, it seems to be everyone. My mother is on Facebook. Everyone seems to be on Facebook. Don't add her. But I now add, I think there's somebody that you've been thinking about getting back in touch with, but you haven't, from your school days, and some kind of connection recently, but not face-to-face. Now I'll see if there's a response there. If there's a response there, I'll continue it with, I think this was probably on the internet, right? Yeah, be careful, there's a lot of weirdos on there. And I'll shrug it off with a joke at the end, and then I'll go back to and then now the line is, okay, good, now that's out of the way, I want you to go back and just focus on the card. Don't think about anything else. So now we again re-engineer that they were thinking about this while they were thinking about the card, even though they weren't. But by me saying, okay, now that's out of the way, I want you just to focus on the card, it makes it sound like that's why I could pick up on that. So that's an example of using it with a hot reading. An example of using it with a cold reading, of course, being you thought about writing a children's book. And another line that's great, I use this with women. Whenever I get a woman on stage that's clearly made an effort to dress up, I'll always say, I get the impression something's distracting you. Did you change your top twice tonight? And the amount of times that hits is, I can't tell you how often that hits. It's close to all the time. And when it doesn't, I'll instantly follow it up with this line, which is, did you change your top twice tonight? No. Oh, but you had another outfit in mind. I think you planned this, you planned your outfit, in advance, but there was one other one, right? Yes. That's not as strong, but it is a way of dancing out of the situation. So they're the two cold reading lines. Now, how do we use that with this system? Well, this system is designed for this. The system is this. It's one thing. When they've made the spread that ranks their life in front of you like this, you now have all the information you need. I'm going to leave the system up to you, whatever it is that you choose to do. But you have all the information that you need to construct a logical, obvious distraction. So, for example, let's say it was with their previous month, and they have ranked finances in a lower bracket, but work in a medium bracket. So now I'm going to use those two to create the obvious distraction. So the obvious distraction becomes, I'm sorry, I can't work out what's going on. Are you distracted by something? yes, no, whatever they say. I get the impression that you're feeling like you're doing too much for too little, and that's kind of constantly nagging in the back of your head. Is that right? Yes. Well, of course we know that they're feeling like that because they're not getting paid enough and they're working too much. So these cards create the obvious distraction. So that's pretty much all I'm going to say about it, because now the only way that you can make the obvious distraction work is by creating your own ones. If you just repeat what I say, it won't work for you, because these are things that I'm just using as examples based on hypothetical possibilities. You have to really be in the moment and use the information that's in front of you and the spectator to create this obvious distraction. But it allows you to weave in information that may be known prior, information that may be cold reading, or information that might be represented by the information or the spread, in this case, that you're working with. But either way, the obvious distraction allows you to take a detour away from the trick, reveal something much more personal, and then come back to it without cluing the audience to the notion of, well, he must have just known that somehow. So, and those two cold reading lines, I say they're cold reading, they're not really cold reading, they're just commonalities. I think you've thought about writing a children's book, and I think you changed your top twice. Guarantee you go out, run out into the streets, do them now, and you'll be amazed. So that's it. That's dealing with people, and that's the trick people, and the notion of the obvious distraction.
Performer behind this curtain, I always love having him here. He specializes in magic of the mind. You know, I really think that the Las Vegas Review-Journal said it best when they said that Luc Germain is to magic what the Rolling Stones were to the Beatles. So please put your hands together for Luc Germain!
How are you? Well, my name is Luc Germain, and I'm a mind reader. So right off the bat, yes I am, and no I don't. You might have noticed I didn't grow up here in Los Angeles. I'm originally from Texas. It's not true. I grew up just outside of Texas in a place called London, England. I moved to Las Vegas from London a few years ago. It was a seamless transition, as I'm sure you can imagine. And one of my favourite things to do in Las Vegas is people watch. Show of hands, how many of you consider yourself a people watcher? See, this is fascinating. Whenever I ask that question, the majority of the hands in the room go up, which leads me to think that we're all just kind of watching each other. And I'm going to watch you right now. So, what's your name? With a kind of Bond villain look going on. What's your name? David. How are you, David? David, would you stand up for me?
My last name is Bond.
Oh, is it? Mr. Bond, would you stand up for me? Stand up? Very good. So, 00, I have a pack of cards here. I'm going to throw them at you. It's not a joke. Be ready to catch them. When you do catch them, take the pack like this, open up the pack, look at one card and remember it. Here's a hint. Please do not forget the card. If you do, all of this is a spectacular waste of time. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Good. Did you see that? Every time I throw, every time my leg pops out like I'm in some sort of 1950s romance movie. You seen a card? Good. I'd like you to, sir, would you stand up? What's your name?
Spencer.
Spencer. How are you doing, Spencer?
Good.
Excellent. Would you throw the cards down to Spencer?
No.
Or you could just pass them. That would work. You don't seem quite as violent as me. Just open up the cards, look at one, and remember it. And then last but not least, let's go right here, sir. With this kind of, yep. Would you stand up for me? Alex, how are you? Well, last night I stayed up really late trying to decide whether I preferred Clive Owen or Russell Crowe. I ended up crying myself to sleep. Aside from that, I'm pretty good. Did you throw me the cards?
Oh, that's right.
I'm sensing Alex is going to be a peculiar nuisance.
You know me well.
Yeah. It's my job to try and work out exactly which card you're all thinking of. So whatever you do from this point onwards, and whatever I do not tell me the card. Okay? Spencer, what is it? Very good, Spencer. I'm going to add you to Facebook. What do you do for a living, Spencer?
In television.
In television.
Yeah.
So you don't do anything for a living. Specifically, what do you do for a living in
I
television?
produce TV.
Do you know what you do?
Yeah.
Okay, well you should probably tell me. What exactly do you do in television?
I produce television.
So you're a producer?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So if I was going to ask you to do this, I want you to make the card that you saw in the pack make sense to you. So you might imagine yourself producing a whole series of TV shows all about the card that you've seen. The history of the card, where the card came from, and so on. And then at the end, you would take probably a 40% cut of the overall show budget. So you can always look forward to that nice payoff at the end. And equally, if you were, I don't know, perhaps a teacher, you might imagine yourself teaching a room full of students about the card. If you were a drug dealer, I'm not pointing any fingers, I'm just saying that you look like a drug dealer. Just make it make sense to you, okay? Hands by your sides. Do you play poker, Mr. Bond?
No, I don't.
That's pretty awesome that you're called Mr. Bond. Hands by your sides. Deep breath in. Let it out, you suffocate. Alright, I think I've got you. The three cards I'm getting are the 5 of hearts, the 8 of spades, and the Jack of diamonds. Spencer, if I got your card, sit down. Now that's 1 out of 3. In scientific circles, that would be considered highly significant. However, right here at the Magic Castle, you're not interested in scientific significance, you're interested in miracles. And a miracle would be the reduction of third world debt. However, 3 out of 3 cards would be pretty good. And you might want to turn around so you don't miss this. Gentlemen, if I got your cards, sit down. That's 3 out of 3. Thank you, you're all very attractive. There's nothing supernatural or psychic about the things that I do. I use my 5 known senses to create the illusion of a 6th. So if Alex comes up to me after the show and says, Luke, read my mind, I can't do that. However, if Alex comes up to me after the show and punches me in the face, then I know exactly what Alex thought about the show. It might sound stupid, but that's all it's about, taking the small details and turning them into the bigger picture. What I do combines verbal communication, what you say and how you say it. Non-verbal communication, up to 60% of a first impression, is created by the way we choose to express ourselves non-verbally. Which is why when I walked out here this evening, this man down here thought, oh my God, he's out on bail. And I am, so high five. Very good. I didn't always work in nice places like the Magic Castle. In fact, I used to work at children's birthday parties. But sadly, there's nothing creepier than a mind-reading clown. We've never met before, correct? You look quite happy about that. Yes or no? Would I be correct in saying that as a child, you were much shorter? Yes? So now you've got to look into my sordid past as a mind-reading clown. Let's try something more interesting. I'm going to try it with you. Miss, what's your name?
Ashley.
Ashley, how are you, Ashley?
Well, thank you.
Good. Would you make your way down here? Actually, you look great tonight. Yeah, do you know? Thank you, Ashley. You look great tonight, Ashley.
Thank you.
So do you, Luke. I get it. It's all right, Ashley. Don't worry about it. Actually, I'm going to ask you to do something for me. I want you to imagine that you're back in school. Now, bearing in mind, when I say the word school, I don't mean university or college. I mean a little girl, like 7 or 8 years old. And I want you to imagine that you're standing with your 2 best friends. Your 2 best friends of then, not now. That would be creepy. And if I were playing this game, if I were in your position, I would say, I eliminate Daniel Lazelle. And I'd eliminate Daniel Lazelle because when I was about 8, he stole one of my girlfriends. Sorry, he's dead now. It doesn't matter why you eliminate one of these 2 little people that you're thinking of, but out loud, get rid of one of them.
Okay. I eliminate Emily.
Emily's gone. Emily's out of here. Emily was a bitch, right? So you should have the name of one person left in mind. I've got a little piece of paper for you. and a little pencil. I want you to go over into the corner so nobody can see what you're doing. Write down the name of the person that you're still thinking of, not Emily, obviously. When you're finished, fold it up into four so no one can see it. As well as that, I'm going to ask Sir, right here, with the silver tie, with the, oh my God, he's seen me expression. We've never met before, correct?
Correct.
Would I be right in saying that as a child, you had a pet?
Yes.
It's a gift. Would I also be right in saying that this pet was a dog?
Yes.
Would I also be correct in saying that this dog is now dead? Yes?
Yes.
Do you remember the name of your little dead dog? Come down here, stand over here for me. Would I also be right in saying that you killed this dog? No. Take this, write down the name of the little dog. When you're finished, fold it up. Have you done actually? Okay, good. I've got some envelopes here. I'm going to ask you to take your piece of paper, slip it inside of the envelope for me.
Oh.
Very good. I'll take the pencil back, and then stick your tongue out. Very good. I am terrified of leaving my DNA anywhere. Have you seen CSI? It's frightening. This one is for you. Take the little piece of paper, slip it inside of that, stick your tongue out. In fact, you can just do this one yourself. I also need one last person, somebody that considers themselves artistic. Do we have any artists in the house? Artistic? Awesome. Thanks very much for coming. I'll see you soon. I'm going to go miss right here, like this, posed like this. With a...
Snap.
Oh, snap! You can stay where you are. It's an easy show to be in.
But I'm not artistic.
That's okay, nor am I. I'm going to ask you to make a drawing.
She is. She's artistic.
She is?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. You brought your own cheerleaders. That's great. This is what I'm going to ask you to do. You're going to look at the piece of paper. You're going to imagine a drawing on it. And then after a second, literally wait 1 second after you visualize it on the paper, make the drawing. There are a couple of rules though. One, please don't draw something immediately obvious, like a house or a boat or a car. Two, draw something you can draw relatively quickly. You know, this is not the ceiling of the chapel. And three, please don't draw a penis. You just had that look in your eye. Pass that back to her. When you're finished, put your drawing inside of the envelope and then seal it and pass it down to the front. Now, Ashley, we don't know each other, correct?
Yes.
We've never met before.
No.
I couldn't possibly know the person that you're thinking of.
True.
Good. It's very hot up here, isn't it?
Sure.
Check this out. Check this out. Production value right there. That is production value of the likes of Cirque du Soleil. Seriously, I couldn't know this person, right?
No.
There's no way on earth I could know this person. This is going to freak you out. Can we bring her in? One day she's going to walk out. Yeah. How are you doing with the drawing? You finished?
Yes.
Good. Put it inside, fold it up. So it's 19.4, put it inside of the envelope, pass the envelope down, keep the pencil, enjoy it on the golf course.
Seal it.
Yep, seal it. And I need one last person, somebody that looks trustworthy and honest. You look pretty trustworthy. What's your name?
James.
James. What do you do for a living, James?
I'm a producer.
So you're not trustworthy. Right. Well, James, we'll use you. I asked somebody this the other night. I said, well, you know, like, are you trustworthy? The guy said, no, I'm not.
If I said if I was a real estate broker, would you trust me?
No, I'd probably chase you with a burning stick. You can stay where you are. This is the drawing, correct? Hold on to this for 1 second. I'll take yours. And then the last one. There we go. Excellent. Hold on to those. You're going to be the judge. Now, this is what I'm going to ask you to do. Take one step forward. Have you ever been to Las Vegas?
Yes.
So you know in Vegas we have those huge signs for casinos, like the casino names?
Sure.
Good. I want you to imagine up here, if it was like it was one of those signs, like massive letters, the name that you're thinking of right now. But actually see it, like actually visualize it in the air for me. And not yet, but in a second, I'm going to ask you to count the number of letters in the word. But you're going to do it in your head. Don't do it on your fingers. Makes it really easy to guess. Okay, and I'm going to tell you when to start. Okay, good. Go. Stop. You just finished, right? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 letters?
Yeah.
Good. This is what I want you to do. I want you to go sort of toward the middle of the word and think of an interesting letter for me that's in the middle. That's interesting. You just looked at one, changed to another one and went back, right? Yes? This is what I think just happened. Does that make sense? Don't say what it is yet, but does that make sense? This was to this. In a clear voice, what's the letter you're thinking of?
T.
Oh my god.
And what was the one that you thought of before?
S.
Ashley, are you okay? Do you want some confetti? It makes everything less scary. All right, I think I've got you. Don't look at this just yet. Kind of hold it right there. Very good. Judge, Mr. Producer. Can I have number 1? You're very eager to get in on the act. That's number 3. Yeah, we in most of Western civilization we use the numeric quantitative device system. Thank you for your help, though. I'm guessing you produce reality TV. Justine was the person you were thinking of. Take a look at what I wrote, and then hold it nice and high so they can see. Justine. We got that. Thank you. You're all very attractive. Come and stand over here.
Stock market going to do Which stock?
Now that's really what's really interesting about this. With a name, it feels like it could be any one of hundreds of thousands of different things, right? That's not strictly true, because at the beginning of every year there are books published, the top 10 names, baby naming books. So in theory, if you could work out roughly when somebody was born, you can eliminate a whole bunch of those names and just leave it with 10. And Justine's a very popular name, especially, I'm guessing you're 24?
23.
23?
I'm 24 next year.
Okay, 23. Justine, so you were 85? Middle of the year, summer? Justine was number 4 in 85, but you're middle of the year, right? Summer child, yeah. Now, with an animal, with a pet, it's much more difficult, because generally there are no kind of, top 10s of the names of pets. What tends to happen is the owner names the pet in a projective way. They kind of infuse a little bit of their own personality into the animal. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
For example, I've got a dog called Bedazzle. But you don't strike me as the arts and crafts type. I'm going to make a few sort of initial guesses about this. Look at me for a second. Big breath in. Out. All right, so you didn't name this dog. Is that correct? Your brother did. Sister? Mother. It was an orphan. You found it. It named itself. It was a talking dog. Alright. See, again, what typically tends to happen is an older sibling will name the animal because the younger guys don't really get any say in it because the other one bullies them. So who named this animal? Your dad. Okay. Where did you grow up? Ventura. And this animal is... The name of this animal is something that your dad did or liked, correct? It links into it, I think. I'm just going to go with it, but I think this is... Don't realise how you're going to spell it, but hold that, don't look at it just yet. Mr. Producer, number 2. Oh, you learned quick. So Dodge was the name. Take a look at what I wrote. Show it now. There we go. Dodge. Thank you so much for your help. This would be come down? Yes. Now it becomes really interesting with the drawing. Yes. It starts to get really interesting because now it could literally be anything in the world, right? Yeah. What's your name? Shanae. If you help, stand right here. Now at the beginning I asked you don't draw something immediately obvious like a house or a boat or a car. And in doing so it seems like it's making it much more difficult on me, right? That's not the truth, because if you drew something like that, it would be at complete random. You know, you would just pick it out of the air. However, by asking you to draw something more obscure, it forces you to go inside of yourself a little bit in order to make the drawing. So in theory, if I could get to know you a little bit, I could probably guess what you would draw. That's what we're going to do over the next 7.5 hours. There is actually a slightly quicker way. Come here. It's the internationally trusted art and science of palm reading. See, this one right here is your love line. Interestingly, there's an almost immediate encounter with a slightly overweight English mind reader. What are the chances? What are the chances? Do you want to touch the tattoo? Touch the tattoo. There we go. Other way. Hand. Very good. This one right here tells me that generally you dislike pain. Yep. And this one is very telling. This one tells me that you have an amazing sense of humour when you understand the joke. Yeah? You probably worked out this has got nothing to do with the drawing. However, I have been taking your pulse. Is this hurting or is this okay?
Fine.
Okay, good. This is what's going to happen. I'm going to say a number of things. When you hear something that makes sense to the image that you've drawn, think the word yes. Don't say it out loud, because then it's really easy for me to guess. But just think the word yes, okay? So it could be something that's natural, as in it appears in nature. It could be man-made. So this is a natural object. This is something that appears in nature. It could be something that's very large. It could be something that's moving. It could be something that's still. That's a confusing one for you there, because it does all three of those, correct? Yeah. Put your arm down for me. What do you do for a living?
I'm a teaching assistant.
You're a teaching assistant. What ages do you teach?
2nd grade.
2nd grade. Okay. What I want you to do, in your mind, don't say anything out loud, but in your mind, is to start drawing the image again. So just start, and I'm going to ask you to stop every now and again. So start, then stop. So it's kind of a curved line. That's at the top of the page. Start again, start drawing again. So that continues on down. It's a straight line. Stop. This is for you. Don't do anything just yet. But in a second I'm going to ask you to make that drawing again, but nice and big so everyone can see it. But don't do it just yet. I've got one last question for you. How old are the children that you teach?
7 and 8.
7 and 8. Sorry, you just told me that, but I couldn't remember. Okay, turn and face away from me so I can't see what you're drawing. And I'm going to say go. We're both going to start drawing at the same time. Ready? Go. I'm finished. That's my favourite joke in the show. Nobody else gets it. Are you done? Good. Hold the drawing away to yourself so nobody can see what it is just yet. Good, and I'm going to turn around. You can face the front. I don't ordinarily do big thank yous at the end of shows, and not because I don't appreciate your help. I do. You've been very nice to me, but because I think they sound really scripted and cheesy and kind of corny. But I do want to thank you. I want to thank you when, in an entertainment landscape that's scarred by reality TV and pop princesses, the more people like you that come out and support live performance of any genre, the more likely it is that Paris Hilton will get hit by a truck. Just turn it around and show them what you drew, nice and high.
Really bad.
Turn it up nice and high. I think that's a tree, correct?
Yeah.
And I think even down to the little tree in the centre there, we both get a tree. Thank you so much. Thank you. Got this. Take it out, take it out. night here at the castle. I will see you soon. Well, there you go. A whole bunch of mechanics to give you the information, and more importantly, the tools to reveal the information in the right way. I hope you're as excited with these concepts as I am to be telling you about them, and I hope that you put them into a show, because really none of this lives until it's performed. And me just talking to you about it and of being academic interest is never going to create the same feeling that you'll get when you do these routines. So do them. Put them into your solid work, you know, and I mentioned something earlier about learning to speak like a mind reader. The more stuff that you do like this, the more you realize there's more opportunity to extend that reveal or make that moment stronger, or do this or do that, or lead them in this direction. And I think the key concept behind mentalism, one of the key concepts at least, is the performer's ability to think on his feet and to lead his audience into a direction, and to always be a few steps ahead so he can take the credit for it. Hopefully some of these techniques and ideas give you solid examples of how it's possible to lead an audience into thinking in a certain direction, and how you can then turn that to your advantage. So my hope is that you'll go out and learn to speak like a mind reader.